Barry Gibb, approaching 80, no longer performs in full venues. No one shares the microphone at his side. For Gibb brothers once laughed in Miami's seaside mansion, a single voice echo. The globe danced to that voice. Once helped broken souls trust love again. But today it sings for those who are gone. He is called the Bee Gees' soul and the falsetto's genius, the definer of disco. Barry is a survivor when the lights go out at the last to hear the world's faded harmonies. He wrote, "Your love of speech is deep. Believing in love, loving someone he could never have, and staying alive. To remind himself to live even if the world crashes, because every note tells a story of fire, blood, and fallen brothers before him, and a heart that keeps beating when no one is singing." Barry Gibb, who wrote a century's melodies, now lives in silence, in the quiet of three dead brothers, singing as if every song might prolong their lives, keeping living and remembering everything after losing everything you lost. Before Barry Gibb was famous, a little, slender, quiet youngster who grew up in poverty, dread, and burn. Born on the Isle of Man in 1946, Barry had scars. Sea gusts blew through old cottages as his father, Hugh Gibb, played drums at little bars to feed the family. His mother, Barbara, was strong enough to keep nothing but her hope that her children would not constantly suffer. Barry was 2 when a little accident nearly killed him. That a curious child snatched a boiling pot from the fire and sustained severe burns. Doctors suggested he might not survive. He survived the night through pain, panic, and quiet. That hospital room, antiseptic smell, and long nights without parents. From then on, Barry was silent, watchful, and remembered them. Always felt safety was the most delicate thing in the world. Because they were poor, the Gibbs had to move from aisle to aisle, from one small apartment to another makeshift house in Manchester. His father, despite few engagements, wandering musician, was fatigued. That household always had music on rainy nights when the wind howled. Through the windows, Hugh played a few drum beats. The sounds awed 3 or 4-year-old Barry, who sat next him. Of drums, guitar, and his parents' simple singing imprinted in him. Music was life's language. Before the Gibbs moved again as unemployment spread in Britain, in search of a fresh life in Australia. They made the longest trek, beginning. 12-year-old Barry arrived in 1958. Queensland. Without money, friends, or a future, he discovered what defined his life: brotherhood and music. Barry, Robin, Maurice, and Leslie sang everywhere anybody would listen. Markets, fairs, and even Redcliffe Speedway, where kids competed for spare change. Barry had to divert fans after their backing tape broke mid-performance to sing live, quieting the throng with his clear, raspy teenage voice. For the first time, he felt capable of more than survival. Barry began to consider music a survival skill. That he wrote songs to communicate his fear, grief, and longing, not for fame, safety. He wrote at night, played guitar with scarred hands, and taught peacefully, and wanted to escape poverty. They didn't know that the poor Gibb lads who sang through dust and motor roar would one day become international music legends. But Barry, from the start, beginning in 1958, music was the only way to survive. When Britain was still recovering from post-war privation, the Gibb family took the biggest decision, leaving everything behind to start over on the other side. They boarded the fair sea for Australia with only a few belongings, a few suitcases of tattered clothes, a guitar, and a weak hope that the promised land might save them from everlasting strife. The tight voyage lasted weeks. It was hot and full with crying children. But when the ship arrived, finally docked, they found a scorching, dusty hell. Yet it was in the suburb where immigrants lived in temporary dwellings in the hot Queensland sun, that red dust afternoons of Redcliffe, that Barry, Robin, and Maurice started singing and performed wherever. Outdoor markets, small cinemas, and Redcliffe Speedway, where the crowd focused on the engines rather than the music. The boys stood in gasoline fumes. One night, when engines clattered to be heard, Barry sang live when their backup track jammed during performing. Shaking, impassioned voice silenced the gathering. For the first time, people listened, not out of curiosity, since they were transported. The brothers knew they had uncovered something that could save them from a life of obscurity. They were the Bee Gees, or brothers, Gibb. A secret pledge to be together even if the world didn't need them. just to seem catchy on posters, would become a music generation's icon. Between 1963 and 1966 saw the Bee Gees attain Australian fame when they signed with Festival.in Spicks and Specks. The basic melody has a hint of melancholy beyond their years, topped local charts. Success proved three poor immigrant guys could make anything. Barry, only 17, was already the he wrote as if time could take his only chance. Each song a confession, a memory. Fragment, a desperate attempt to survive. Enough. Barry felt Australia's modest music scene's restrictions. Fire inside him refused to settle. In 1967, the Bee Gees' return to English music was bursting with the Beatles, Rolling Stones, and Who, making it a perilous homecoming. Their one chance to prove their music wasn't catchy pop. Fortune grinned when they met Robert Stigwood, the famous manager that worked with Cream and Eric Clapton. Stigwood saw Barry's voice, a strategist and songwriter who knew how to touch people. His leadership propelled the Bee Gees to success. Many radio listeners mistaken the 1941 New York mining disaster for ironically. The misconception made the Beatles famous. Love Somebody, Massachusetts lyrics were followed by soul pop tunes that were sweet eerie. The world called them Beatles heirs, but inside group, pressure was rising. Success came too soon, and cracks appeared. With his clean, trembling voice, Robin began to feel the brothers' relationship, overshadowed by Barry, who directed songwriting and studio sessions. The battlegrounds. Robin desired solitude, Barry togetherness. Behind, Maurice, the calm twin, sought to mediate, but none bowed at the refined harmonies of 1968's Idea and 1969's Odessa, screaming and slamming studio doors. Robin sometimes left mid-match. Session. The audience had no notion that brothers spent nights in quiet behind their flawless harmonies. This tension created curiously beautiful, sad songs, introspective and lonely, unlike 1960s pop. For Barry, he thought each song was therapy, keeping the family together. Keeping writing and singing would preserve their poverty-forged relationship and shared dreams. But the world changed. Is never as simple as a melody. The Bee Gees were entering their career peak. The shadow came in nearly undetected. Three long-haired, velvet-clad dreamers returned to England to a chaotic music scene. Their first golden age began in 1967 with Bee Gees' debut released. A new pop era includes To Love Somebody, New York mining disaster 1941, and Holiday had gloomy beauty. The CD was not merely pleasant, but deeply moving. They ruled Britain and America, joining the Beatles and the Halls. Within and across the Atlantic, imbalance increased. Barry, frontman, main songwriter, became center. His genius was certain. He knew rhythm, structure, emotion, and how to make song makes people cry. Yet its brightness lingers. Robin, with his frail voice, wanted to be the second soul of with the 1968 release of The Gap was evident. I joked about one of the most haunting ballads that Robin's voice moved fans in over 20 nations. Barry wanted control and Robin wanted acknowledgement, but stillness replaced laughing. Maurice tried to keep them together, but the gap was too vast. Robin broke the breach in 1969. The Bee Gees, formerly the pride of two Gibbs, remained. Barry and Maurice continued under the previous name. And released Cucumber Castle, their labor of love. The glory days ended with its critical and commercial failure. Shame. The press branded them the brothers who couldn't get along, comparing them to Ego and Hurt-plagued Oasis decades later. Without speaking for nearly a year, Robin fell into solo fame's loneliness. Barry hid in the studio as Maurice viewed old images alone. From Redcliffe, perfect harmony once ruled the earth. In 1970, almost by chance, they reunited in a studio without apologies or promises. A glance spoke everything. They played, wrote, sang, and cried. That transformed the Bee Gees' music, quieter, deeper, seasoned. Agony. Their 1971 album Trafalgar resembled both. Confession and reconciliation. How Can You Mend a Broken Heart was their first U.S. #1 hit. A melancholy ballad with airy harmonies. The song healed both romantic and brotherhood heartbreak. From brokenness and loss, Trafalgar restored the Bee Gees to the charts and themselves. They found a new humanity in their music, and though the wounds never healed, they realized music was the only way to express what words could not and stay together. With Trafalgar's emotional success, the BGS after the storm. Men became wiser, but music, like, never stood static. The trio changed course in 1972 from romantic pop to American R&B growth in 1974. Natural, a soul, funk, and pop record with restless energy signaled this change. New York streets. Despite low sales, it was a turning point. Barry experimented with his now famous falsetto throughout the sessions. Nobody realized that those half accidents would characterize disco. By 1975, his voice experiments revolutionized popular music. Miracle happened. Main course was released. Everything changed. Producer R.F. Martin. The Bee Gees reinvented pop craftsmanship into the disco era's forefront. Jive talking and nights on Broadway erupted on the charts. Miami dance floors to New York, London, and beyond. Pulsing guitars, bass lines, and Barry's electric falsetto created a unique vibe. Critics and spectators called it enticing, captivating, and liberating. The visionary who turned rhythm into language and disco into culture was Barry Gibb, dubbed the Disco Mozart, for his ability to transform human emotions, joy, sadness, loneliness, and desire into universal melody. In 1976, the Bee Gees resumed their momentum among world children. Dance floors worldwide were ignited by Should Be Dancing. Disco became the new religion with its flashing lights and infinite grooves. Young. But the Bee Gees' 1977 composition assignment was the apex. The soundtrack for Saturday Night Fever was never expected to be one of the greatest moments in popular music history. Saturday Night Fever, featuring songs like Staying Alive, Night Fever, and How Deep Is Your Love, sold 40+ million copies. The Bee Gees received Album of the Year at the 1978 Grammys. 5 straight Billboard Hot 100 number ones is unparalleled. 100. They were a phenomenon on every radio. The club and dance floor echoed their voiced symbol. Barry Gibb's hair, beard, and placid smile became its face. Grandeur never comes free. Behind the glaring lights, sleepless nights, weariness, and crushing isolation. Barry, who wrote and produced almost everything, mild melancholy set in among clapping and camera flashes. Felt hollow. Like every compliment was a thin veil over his exhaustion. Fame always meant seclusion, yet the Bee Gees persisted. They released Spirits Having Flown in 1978 and 1979. Tragedy, Too Much Heaven, and Love You Inside Out featured their best work. Charts, strengthening their disco hegemony. The Bee Gees sold 220 million records and won 5 Grammys, 2 of which were a Brit Award and American Music Award, proved they were not a fleeting fancy. After the successes of Saturday Night Fever and Spirits had flown to an unrepeatable peak, an anti-disco movement emerged in the 1980s. Americans derided Staying Alive, which they once danced to. The Disco Sucks movement became violent. In Chicago stadiums, records were burned. Radio stations banned BG. Press mocked songs as glittery relics. Heroes turned villains overnight. Barry, Robin, and Maurice watched names fade from radio, charts, and public favor. For Barry, the man whose songs connected the world, fall was more than a business loss. It was spiritual. Blow. He avoided public appearances, troubled by feeling that his talent was only briefly admired. Depression creeped in during quiet nights when he could hear his heartbeat in the band. Small fractures deepened. Robin and Morris preferred softer pop rock, but Barry wanted to retain the Bee Gees' essence with modern R&B. All are still loved music, but disagreed on how to preserve it. Each carried private info-fall wounds, and studio conflicts often led to months of silence. Although the Bee Gees survived, their brotherhood was waning. Legal issues arose. Young artists accused them of plagiarism. Their disco hits were excessively derivative. The West Press, previously their biggest ally, believed weird Barry crazy stories. Robin agonized over the band's breakup, and Maurice drank to forget. Even though most of it was unfounded, the constant scrutiny isolated them. Silence became their only defense. Barry kept writing during the tumult, but now for others. He composed behind the scenes from 1981 until 1983. Producing for music superstars. Grammy 1981, Diane Heartbreaker, Barbra Streisand, Guilt to Warwick, Islands in the Stream for Kenny Rogers and Dolly Parton, Billboard No. 1, 1983. Barry's mark was on every song. Signature, rich melody, crisp structure, and emotional clarity. proof that even if the public ignored him, his talent would remain. Still, Woon's fame healed slowly. Robin and Maurice, finally with Barry, carried silent doubts. Were they still young Beeges? Or just session players around Barry Gibb, the lonely genius trying to avoid despair? The question was never spoken, but it haunted every 1980s song in 1988, disaster struck. Andy Gibb, youngest myocarditis caused by years of addiction, killed my brother at 30. Depression. A burgeoning talent was lost to the world. Barry saw it as an incurable wound. He nurtured Andy, supervised his profession, and made him the family's pride. When Andy no one could reach him as he fell. News arrived 5 days after Andy S. Barry nearly collapsed on his birthday. He blamed himself. I could have saved him, that he never forgot his verdict. That hurt became Wish You Were Here, the 1989 album. 1. Leaving the brother, never returning. Barry had a gruff, grieving voice. When the song was more than music, it was quiet as the 3 remaining brothers sang Toth Deceased. In every melody afterward, Barry, there was usually a gap where Andy resided, right on the other side of the sound. The death of his youngest sibling shocked Barry. Got quieter, no longer seeking fame, but keeping what was left, his family, close. The Bee Gees returned gradually but steadily in 1991 with Big Expectations. Civilization. The Gibb brothers lost their father, Hugh, around that period. For Barry, its second major loss after Andy. Once, he stated, losing my father was my first drum beat was lost since his father started their love of music. So from their sadness, the Bee Gees wrote more calmly. Still Waters 1997, a mature soul and ballad album, sold over 5 million copies globally, a spectacular turnaround after years off rejected as outmoded. The music alone sounded like confession of a man who lost everything yet kept going. That same year, they won the Brit Award for Music Excellence. Appreciation to 30-plus years of dedication. However, Barry's health declined away from the spotlight. Decline. He was hospitalized for serious stomach irritation in 1998. Stress. Cost of years under constant strain. He became both leader and caregiver when Robin and Maurice struggled with health problems. Bee Gees were no longer the explosive 1970s band. It was a family sticking together through every song and stage night. Their 2001 album, This Is Where I Came In, their last studio album. Title tune seemed sorrowful. Prophecy. Here's Where I Arrived, and the voyage ended. The 3 brothers looked back, no longer following trends, merely wanting to thank the audience. Each. Again, catastrophe struck in 2003. Barry's spiritual twin, Maurice Gibb, died suddenly from difficulties after surgery. The hit nearly killed Barry. He fled, ceased performing from public life for years, saying he lost half his soul and music. I lost delight. For him, the Bee Gees died with their disbandment. Maurice. Barry became quieter and lived in his head after losing Maurice. Memories. Maybe he knew too well what it means to lose someone you love, not just in his family, but earlier in life. Before fame, before the name was known, Barry's brief marriage to Maureen Bates, the first woman to make him believe love may stabilize unsteady years. They met midway point 1960s, when Bee Gees struggled to settle in Australia. Maureen calm, grounded, and one of the few who wasn't mesmerized by the faint glow surrounding Barry's music. He played small venues and wrote songs in a rundown rented room. She said quietly trusted him, because she saw the light, not fame. How he described melodies. Barry was 19 when they married in 1966. A basic wedding. No extravagant clothes or spectacle, just youth. Idea of 2 people starting afresh with nothing. Marriage was too early and stardom too fast. The Bee Gees debuted in Australia with Spicks and Specks months after their wedding and were invited back, England. The career took off. Never fully anchored, love was dragged by tour and flight speed. As the Bee Gees blew up in London, Barry's schedule was relentless, leaving Maureen behind, silently waiting. They had no children and gradually split up. Worlds. One of spotlight and solitude, short calls and lonely nights burdened the marriage. By 1970, Barry knew the title of the Bee Gees' first major hit, How Can You Mend a Broken Heart? Too well. His Maureen marriage ended discreetly. No scandal, no public accusations, just 2 young people who loved each other when their world was too bad. Tiny to bear such big hopes. This breakup led Barry to love, like music, cannot subsist without one usually runs forward while the other stands still. He carried the emptiness into subsequent tracks. Sweet but tinged with remembering Morin. He felt nameless grief. No lover anymore. Forever the first witness to a child genius. After his marriage to Morin ended, Barry was in one of most empty periods in his life. Between stardom and a broken heart, he returned to London and Tacity worked to forget. Still, he feared he would die alone again. Like that moment when the stage lights go off and just silence remains. Fate appeared. Not in a backstage at Top of the Pops in 1967, Barry met former Miss Scotland Linda Gray in the audience of performers. Edinburgh has a quiet, robust grace. Softness he believed was gone forever. Barry wasn't Linda's star. She saw a man with too many wounds. Maybe it was her serene stare that halted his sprinting. They laughed, spoke, and started a new chapter. Not loud or contrived. Just the calm relationship between mature spirits who cherish quietness. They married on Barry's 24th birthday, September 1st, 1970. Beautiful coincidence, a divine gift. Born day became day, he found his lifelong partner. This marriage was not rushed or publicized, only grew affection and trust. While other bands split, Barry and Linda decided to live in a beachfront property and raise 5 children away from limelight. Children: Stephen, Ashley, Travis, Michael, Alexandra. Barry's only anchor during storms was Linda. From Disco Stink's response to Andy's death 2 years, he fought depression and disease. When everyone dubbed him genius, she called him my husband. The early morning coffee maker went to the balcony to write tunes. Linda helped Barry maintain his equilibrium amid massive celebrity and personal anguish. But even this enjoyment was not complete. Peaceful. Their marriage was stretched by work, touring, and Barry's emotional crises. Repeatedly at risk. Linda was tired of seeing her husband struggle. Quit job, self-blaming. She told pals, Barry carries the family's pain, and sometimes I can just watch him. Endure it. Linda stayed. She knew this man didn't need another audience. He needed a seat. Lights finally came on. Barry became silent after Maurice died unexpectedly during surgery in 2003. The Bee Gees disbanded forever, losing a music icon. Barry, who wrote hundreds of classic songs, was lost in his own tunes. Retreated to Miami, living quietly in his seaside home with Linda, rarely making an appearance. Public appearances. He worked on few producing ventures in the years that followed. Collaborations, and spent much of his time with family. Chronic arthritis gradually betrayed the hand that gave music life. Each time when Barry touched the piano keys, a sharp ache went up his arm, painful reminder that time was recovering its gifts. The same hands penned, "How deep is your love?" made millions cry to keep alive, now trembled in dim light, unable to grasp a thought. Chord, steady. Barry knew the physical anguish was just the beginning. What he felt exhausted by stillness. Silence had been his since losing his voice-sharing brothers. Robin, his musical twin, the partner in every note and breath for nearly 50 years, fell ill in 2011. Liver cancer. No miracle occurred as it spread swiftly. Barry went to hospital, every day, sitting by Robin's bed in silence, sometimes just holding his hand, terrified to let go losing him forever. When the voice that sang "I Started a Joke" stopped in 2012, Barry realized part of him had perished. The air at Robin's funeral filled with sorrow. Barry, feeble and old, stood before the casket. Within months, the hall went silent when he spoke. He was no longer artistic. Or idle, just a brother grieving. "BG, I'm now the last BG," softly. "There's no one left for me to sing with. Goodbye to life." Barry no longer performed for anyone when he appeared in public. Applause. He sang to contact his lost spirits. He considered music a conversation with the past, where Robin's laughing, Morris's voice, and Andy's voice were still there. Outside the studio door, slight echo. Bee Gees' famous song in 1997 for Salem Dion. Barry had only seen a ballad about legacy and immortality. However, his brother's deaths changed things. Haunting. Barry heard Robin and Maurice during Dion's "We Don't Say Goodbye," harmonizing behind her as if they were still with him, but in another way world. Robin first sang "I Started a Joke" in melancholy ballad form. 1968. Barry revived it at memorials after Robin's death. He choked on the chorus since it wasn't a song anymore. It was. Confession. The confession of an elder brother who survived but could never escape survival agony. He performed to love someone every time. Barry paused as if to ask how to mend a broken heart, waiting for Andy's response. For him, such tunes weren't merely memories. He preserved his family's memory with them. It's claimed Andy Gibb produced one last, unreleased recording. Months before dying. A close family friend said Andy mailed it only. Final message to Barry. Over 30 years, Barry has never shared it. Let anyone hear. He locks the master tape in a safe, not out of fear of loss, but dread of exposing something sacred. In 2009, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame inducted Barry as a solo artist, the highest songwriting accolade. But he appeared in a basic black suit that spoke softly, bowed, and acknowledged his brothers. And in after his mother Barbara died in 2016, the first phase ended. Gibb family generation. I'm the last leaf, Barry whispered. Every song he writes, every note he sings, is no longer ceased performance. A memorial ritual. For Barry Gibb, music transcended art. It allows live people to communicate with the deceased. A way to sing alone. Not for the world, but voices lost forever. In later years, Barry Noster-like lives longer. He lived like a temple caretaker, full of fevery note had memories, echoes, and ghosts of those who lingered. His quiet Miami home ostentatious. The studio was dark, but it was silent. They yet had the faint buzz of old records. Each morning, Barry would take tea to the balcony facing the sea and listen to the wind. Only thing left who could sing with him. After Robin and later deaths, Barry lost his mother Barbara in 2016, leaving him the sole survivor. Generation. He once likened himself to the last tree leaf fluttering in the wind, green and alive for one reason only: to keep a vow to the dead. After that, he stopped writing songs to pursue hits. He prayed in every song and tune to name forgotten loved ones. When doing Immortality, he closed his eyes for the chorus. We avoid goodbyes. Nobody knew if he was thinking of Robin, Celine Dion, or himself. The man sings all three harmony parts alone. For Barry, music no longer worked. A ritual, a place where life could speak the dead. Barry has hardly appeared since 2017. Public, rarely performing at Beach's memorials. Every time he goes on stage, the audience rises to honor a legend, but also because they know the man before them has 3 lives on his shoulders. His performances, though ragged and trembling, hush the world. Within every breath, individuals may hear a man's loneliness after music destroyed his family. Barry Grammys, sales, and honors cannot measure Gibb's legacy. He is one of the best 20th century songwriters, with over 1,000 songs, created timeless tunes for the Bee Gees, Barbra Streisand, Dolly Parton, Kenny Rogers, Diana Ross, more. What matters most is that he proves a rare showbiz truth. Legends are born from loss, not glory. Continuing to sing instead of giving up. Life of Barry Gibb has been an odd mix of success and seclusion. Life where the bright stage lights slowly scorched their creator by their glow. From an impoverished youngster on the Isle of Man, he became a musical prodigy, creator of a generation's soundtrack. Though famous, he saw his family fall apart. One voice after another faded until just his remained. Last tree leaf. Barry Gibb is nearly 80 and no longer requires anyone to call him legendary. He merely wants to be known as a brother, husband, and father. Father, who loved music and family dearly, because he made suffering sweet. Songs he left. Your depth love to love? I joked Immortality as Centunly music. They are pages from a broken heart's journal. Beating. Barry may be better at something other than songwriting. Famous falsetto, but in his willingness to live, sing, and face memories others would rather forget. He is something music rarely creates. A sign of loyalty, recollection, and eternal affection. When notes end while immortality fades, we hear Barry Gibb and echoes of his 3 brothers and one truth from the past, that heartfelt love and music are immortal. Barry Gibb isn't just a melodic storyteller. He preserves history by singing for the dead. Longer sing and living for a family's unfulfilled goals. Andy started a joke, or how deep is your love? Do you listen again? Feel those voices whispering around you? If Barry Gibb's story moved you, comment. I love Barry to honor the last Bee Gees brother. Share a song or memory that brings their music to mind.